Joining me now with more is Ayman Mohyeldin. He's the host of Ayman on MSNBC, and he has reported extensively from the region and from Gaza. And Ayman, thank you so much for joining me and also for keeping us all so informed throughout the last 50 days. I wanted to start just by asking you about your reaction to what you've seen over the last couple of days. What are people not talking about, or what has stuck out to you?
Well, I think the most important thing is the mechanism of releasing the hostages and creating a diplomatic framework that now is clearly working to deliver both the safe passage of hostages back to Israel, but at the same time allowing for humanitarian aid to be delivered into Gaza, the release of Palestinians that have been held inside Israeli jails being returned to their families. So what is clearly established over the past couple of days, which is what I think a lot of the officials I've been speaking to in the region are hopeful about, is that this diplomatic mechanism, this framework for dialogue that has allowed the last 3 days to bear fruit, can actually be prolonged. Now, keep in mind, this was something that certainly the Qataris believe could have been established much earlier on in this conflict when this war broke out. They had actually shown to the Americans and the Israelis that Hamas, based on what they were saying publicly and willing to do on the ground with the release of the 2 Americans and the 2 Israelis early on, they were prepared to enter into this kind of framework. But here we are almost 7.5 weeks later, and it has taken hold. And I think now the focus is on how do they build on this momentum to prolong it so that the suffering in Gaza comes to an end.
And you've done, Ayman, some really interesting reporting on the role of the Qataris in this. Explain to us a little bit more about why there was that delay, why it didn't happen earlier, as you reported.
So according to the sources I've been speaking to, Jen, when this conflict broke out, when the attack happened on October 7th, the terrorist attack against Israel happened on October 7th, it was clear from that moment that Qatar was going to play an important role for one very simple reason, that Hamas's leadership, its political leadership, resides right now in Doha. So they were able to gather the leaders of Hamas there and begin to speak to them about what had happened, what they knew about these hostages, and more importantly, why they wanted to take these civilian hostages. And from that moment on, it became clear that the chaotic situation that unfolded after October 7th included many layers of information that I think we are still learning about. Who kidnapped all of the hostages, who was responsible for them, which Palestinian factions had them under their control. And as the Qataris began to assess that information, relay it to the Americans, relay it to counterparts they were talking to inside Israel, it was clear that Hamas was willing to release some of these hostages, certainly the civilian hostages that it said it had no interest in keeping. And so the pressure began to mount from the Qataris with the Americans on the Israelis as to whether or not the priority of the operation, the military operation of going into Gaza, was going to be about releasing the hostages or, as they claimed, to try and destroy Hamas. And it seemed certainly to the negotiators that those odds in the beginning were somewhat contradictory, that if you really wanted to release the hostages, as had been demonstrated, there was going to be this attempt, as the military wing of Hamas showed, they were willing to release the civilians without any preconditions. So Qatar played an important role in being able to begin that confidence-building measure. But there are certainly things and calculations that the Israeli government was making that were not privy to anybody else as to why they still went ahead with the bombardment, the ground invasion, up until what we saw 3 days ago.
Such interesting reporting. I encourage everybody to read it. He's written about this. Ayman, I want to ask you, tomorrow is day 4 of a 4-day pause. What happens on day 5, 6, and 7? Some of this we don't know, but what are you expecting? What are you watching for?
Well, the first thing I'm watching for is whether or not Hamas is able to consolidate the remaining hostages that Israel believes currently exist inside the Gaza Strip. And I say that because what emerged from the early days of the reporting around this was that Hamas was telling the intermediaries they did not have all of the hostages that were being reported to be missing under its control. Some had been taken by other Palestinian faction groups, including Islamic Jihad. Others had been taken by Palestinian gangs and smugglers and individuals. So Hamas was trying to say to their intermediaries that if you wanted us to try and consolidate all of these hostages that you say are currently inside the Gaza Strip, you would have to give us time. You'd have to pause the war so that we can find out where they are and try to bring them under our control so that we can secure their release. The reason why we were able to get a 4-day truce is because they were able to establish and demonstrate that they had at least 50 hostages in their custody at the beginning of the truce. So we knew that they could guarantee the release of at least 50 hostages. They have claimed that they have about 70 hostages that are Israeli soldiers that they will not be released until more negotiations and a complete cessation of the violence. So you can take those 70 or so Israeli soldiers out of the mix for now, but that leaves about 100 or so that are still unaccounted for. And so Hamas is saying to the international mediators, certainly to the Qataris and the Egyptians, if you want to prolong this ceasefire, then we will be able to go out, find out where these other hostages are inside the Gaza Strip, bring them into our control, under our consolidated control, and begin to release them as we have been doing with these civilians. But if the war resumes, we will not be able to guarantee the safety of the remaining civilians that you claim are inside Gaza being held by other factions or other Palestinians.
This is such an important thing to watch, as you just outlined, because all of these hostages, as you just explained, are not necessarily with Hamas. They could be with these other militant groups. Hamas is responsible for negotiating with these groups. It's a very challenging situation. Ayman, thank you so much for all of your reporting and also for joining me this afternoon.